Okay, so welcome to our Comprehensive Literacy for All book study. We are on chapter 4 this week, Emergent Reading. And we're glad you're here. And you may have read chapter 4, you may have not gotten there yet. It doesn't matter where you're at with the book because we'll be going through it together, and it's a great time for all to just ask questions and learn and have a conversation. So I've pulled up our book snaps because you guys have done a lot of work here, and there's some really nice book snaps about this chapter and the last chapter. So we'll take a minute to look through these, and if you are feeling up to it and you wanted to share about yours at all, then let me know and I can go to your slide and just let us know what stood out for you, why did you choose certain things, or if you want to explain it anymore, that would be great.
Hey Siri, I just want to say I was putting mine together just today, that I am, and I don't use Google Slides very often, so I hit something that I thought was only affecting my slide, and I think it may have affected all slides. So if some different, it's
no problem.
I take full responsibility for that. I think it was just the background color, however. So
yeah, I saw that.
People might want to go in and rechange their thing if it's a big deal to them.
Yeah, if you right.
I would have gone in and changed each one, but I didn't know I really didn't know what I did, other than
that's okay, and we wouldn't know which backgrounds are everybody's. But thanks for owning up to that. Okay, thanks, Natalie. Natalie, did you want to share yours at all? I saw yours, looks great.
Yeah, mine was just at the last. I just picked a few quotes that I liked, and I actually think one of them I tried to animate a different way, and it doesn't. I don't know that it came up. And a lot of quotes I picked just have to do not just around comprehensive literacy supports, but just working with students with disabilities in general. In my experience, if you click it again, I think the one that's supposed to be animated will be up there.
Yes.
There are no prerequisites. It's that presumed competence kind of thing. I mean, you have to, you take them as they are and you help to move them along. And I don't think you don't have to check any boxes to go to the next step, sort of. So I really liked no one is to anything to learn to read or write. No one is to anything to do anything, So a lot of these kind of go along with just my overall philosophy. And the biggie, which is hard, and I even made a note in my book, it's hard for me too, is that pause and wait. That is so hard. But yet it's so important, very important. So
great. Yeah.
Ones I chose.
Love it. Thank you. This is kind of like the bumper sticker edition. I feel like these are all really standout quotes. Thanks, Natalie. I'm going to go back, look at a few more. Anybody want to share in theirs? Go ahead and let me know as I come to it. These are amazing. Did I just skip one? No, okay. These are great. Look at this. We've got an example of crowd over here. What you might say and do. People are going to want to come back to this. This is nice. I love that there's book ideas here, and we're looking at older students. Again, if you want to share anything, just go ahead and pop it in there. Reading signs. Yep, things in the real world. We've got some new ones for our last chapter too, which is great. Again, every week you can do a book snap for the chapter you've already read or the chapter coming up. Whatever works best for you. We've got Coach Josh here. Kristen, thinking of your son. His name, that could be really exciting for him.
For sure.
These are great. Okay, I think we've seen some of these before. Great. Okay. Let's get into our slides for today. All right, so again, we're in week 3, but we're on chapter 4, talking about emergent reading. And I can tell there's a lot of thought gone into this chapter, a lot of good ideas already circulating through those book snaps. So in the book, they talk about emergent reading and that it is for learners of any age. It could be, and that it's all the things that turn into conventional reading, and that conventional reading is our goal, but that students may be at the emergent level at any age. They talk about, they describe strategies are things that can increase interest in print and engagement, and that's what part of this emergent reading is. For instance, they talk about, so kind of what did they say? Emergent readers cannot identify words out of context, but they can successfully tell the story of a familiar book or interact with reading material they find interesting. All this when given the right supports and experiences. So that's where it's on us, right, to provide those supports, experiences, and access to books and appropriate books. So, and this can be also signs like we saw in Krista's book snap, looking at the target, familiar words and signs like this. I'm just going to go to our next slide and then we will start chatting about this. Brenda shared this with us from the book study that she participated in. And my slides are covering the name. Brenda, if you can tell us who this is from, we can give her credit.
Wern is her last name.
Okay, Eliza Warren, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Eliza Warren, yeah.
Yeah. So emergent readers must do all of these things. It's a big list. Any thoughts right now about these things, or what emergent readers do, or what we can help them do?
I think that what stuck out to me right in the beginning, what talked about the most recent research suggests that parents of children with disabilities give literacy a high priority, but their children may be less interested in print-based experiences than children without disabilities. And I was like, man, why is that? And as I talk to parents and therapists with birth to 3, some of it is because I think, I don't know why, and the research doesn't say why, but some of it is because in the very young ages where typical emergent reading is happening, sometimes the medical stability of the child is not there. And so the priority might be feeding, or might be sleeping, or should we try this med, or should we do a VNS to stop seizures, or should we? And so even though they're reading the child before they go to bed at night, there's so much more that takes the forefront, and that makes sense to me. The other thing is that I think it's on us at an early age to talk about how literacy in emergent reading relates to AAC, even really early on. Because when I tell parents of 3-year-olds, the only way they're going to be able to say exactly what they want to say is if they can spell it. And there is kind of a stunned look on their face because normal 3-year-olds don't spell well. And I said, so we get going with letter of the week, like we did with Johnny, like we did with the sibling, like we did with everyone else, right? It reminds me of, I was teaching my daughter how to read, and she was about 3, and my son was 2, because they're super close together. And my son said, when I become a girl, will I learn how to read? And so he just, in his mind, he was like, I guess girls read and boys don't. And again, he's 2. So if you're 2 and you have a disability and your siblings are reading, is there a thought, when I'm physically capable, do I become a reader? When I'm visually capable, do I become a reader? When I can turn pages, do I become a reader? Maybe there's a mystery there. I don't know. That line in the research was like, wow, we're starting behind the 8 ball already. Like, I don't know, but I think it's something to consider.
Yeah. Anyone else have thoughts on that?
What you say, Brenda, too, I think, because it also talks about the shared reading and how the research has shown that those shared reading experiences in young kiddos with disabilities, they're still getting the same benefit as as younger kids who don't have the disabilities. But I think you bring up a very valid point, one I hadn't thought of until you mentioned it, is just life takes over. Parents have to prioritize, or they're just exhausted, or they're dealing with so many other things that might be more important at the time. So I also think that sometimes we need to acknowledge that in parents, acknowledge that their struggle is real. And because it's so, I would imagine, I don't have a child with a disability, but I would imagine it would be so easy to feel guilty about, oh, I didn't do shared reading with my students, so now they're never going to spell or have literacy skills or whatever. Like, it'd be easy to feel that way. But I think it's important to validate that they are doing the best they can with what they've got, and to just take those moments as they're able. Take the moments as they're able.
I totally agree.
I also think that idea that a kid is thinking,
Natalie.
oh, when I can see or hold a book or whatever, also as the parents are, we just got through the whole not reaching this milestone, and all those early childhood milestones happen or don't happen in our case. And then you go into the school system or the next level of reading or whatever. And you're like, oh no, we're starting again, not hitting this milestone. And so then you are lost again. I mean, because you're lost when you're not hitting the milestones, the developmental milestones in the beginning, and then you're hitting with all this, academic stuff. Then it's like, oh no, not hitting it again. So got to start over and learn again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love how it's on the first page of the book, it talks about how older students with significant disabilities may still be emergent readers. And we're thinking of the reason why being the lack of access, opportunity, and experience. Realizing that you're providing those opportunities no matter what the age when they're at that emergent reading phase. But also I love that this list starts with the why. And that's all kids, isn't it? But we have to be creative in thinking about that with the older students of why might they want to learn to read.
Right. And we know that kids have skills in different areas too. You may be more conventional in some ways, right? You may have different splinter skills, but yeah, it's a great point. Okay, I'm just gonna keep moving through, but basically they're talking about shared reading and independent reading and how important that is. And so shared reading being that interaction with someone, with an adult, and independent reading being access to books and text throughout the day. And how that can be difficult for students sometimes to have that access. We can have a print-rich environment at home, and but can your student pick up that book and read it? Or do they have access to get onto the computer and do that? And is it easy to get to, right? All these things. So if you can, I realize this doesn't really work so well if you have a Chromebook, but if you can go into annotate, which is these three little dots at the top of your screen, it should be, and it'll say view options, I think, and you can annotate. You can find a stamp that is a heart or a star, and let us know what, just to get the feel for things, or for yourself. What do you put a heart on something that you're feeling good about this with your student or your child, your class, and put a star on something you think you want to work on more, independent or shared reading. We got some in there already. Great. And if you need help figuring this out, because I did when I started doing the annotate, please feel free to unmute and we'll help you.
So you go to view details, and then you hit stamp, and then you pick your stamp.
Thank you. All right, so a lot of people are feeling good about shared reading. And if you want, you can just put it in the chat too. Maybe wanting to work on access to independent reading more, ways to help students with that. We've got a circle, could be anything you choose. Great.
I guess the phone version doesn't have access to the stamps, so people are sharing.
That's great.
Again, maybe feeling good about the shared reading and need to work on independent reading. And I think a lot of us feel like, what do those experiences of independent reading look like with a complicated physical body? Yeah,
exactly. Okay, I'm gonna
somebody put a heart on the independent reading, so let's hear from you. Who put the heart on independent reading?
I had, but it was a mistake. I just didn't know that if I kept clicking the screen that it would keep putting stamps.
Oh, okay.
That's all right. That's part of the fun of this.
Just like not knowing you can change the background of every single slide.
Exactly. And honestly, sometimes we just put these engagement tools in because it's fun to learn new things and helps us with our own practice, right? So you're doing online work with kids. Learn more about independent reading for older learners. Great. I think there's several people here that would like to do that. All right. I'm going to clear and go to our next slide. Brenda talked a little bit about some of the shared reading research earlier, but you can look through this, just showing that, you know, it's so important for developing, shared reading is so important for developing knowledge required for reading success. There's a lot of information about the research around shared reading in this book. So if that's something you might want to go back to on page 51 to share with others, I recommend that. Okay, so in the idea of shared reading, they talk about follow the car. Is there anybody who wants to talk about what this is? Or if you've used it with someone else could explain it.
It looked like a few people did Google Slides on this exact flow chart. So maybe somebody who did one who kind of feels like this is not new information to you might want to share.
And if you didn't do one, but you kind of feel good about it, feel free to talk about it too.
Did you see that at some point in the book, the wait time said 15, 20, 30 seconds, like not 5, like the wait time was significant. I noticed that.
Yeah. So I'm going to do that right now. say, oh, go ahead.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say is because I did took this and made it out with the biscuit book. And that's the biggest thing is the wait time for, especially with my daughter. It's like 30 seconds to a minute. It is really hard. I've started like singing a song in my head while I wait. Usually it's one of her songs, but it's in my head, and for her to come up with a response. So, but the wait time is really, really hard. And then sometimes the response is just a simple like head jerk or a head movement or something, and like, oh, and so then I just make it up as I go and like think that, okay, this is what she would have said. And so and then you take it off from there.
Yeah, you're validating her response, whatever it is. Yeah, and going with it and maybe adding a little bit more. Yeah, great. So they talk about commenting. You're going to read the story, you're going to comment on it. A was ask a question, and I think they've changed it since, right, to ask for participation, or what is it? I forgot to look at that.
And ask for participation and wait.
And wait. Great, thank you. Yeah, and I think on our next slide, they also talked about put the crowd in car once you've got those first, when you're moving on, kind of like another phase, layering in more types of questions. And actually, if you go to, Krista, is it your slides that have
one?
The progression, right? I'm actually going to show that again because I think that was really nice. Let's see. Here we go. So
that's the first one, and then the second one.
Okay, yeah. So she's got the example of something, you're reading the page, you're waiting, see Biscuit walking. You're asking for participation, you're waiting again. Maybe the student doesn't respond after you waited, what, 30 seconds, right, Krista?
Mm-hmm.
And then I like walking with my wheelchair vest. I can see the sun, maybe. You're going to the next page. Oh, yes, you're going to respond. You like going on walks. Yesterday we walked around the neighborhood. I hoped we could walk by the river this afternoon. Signs I like. Great. I love that you've also put in different options that students might do. Like you said, it may be a movement. It may be that they're using their AAC system. It may be a grimace or a sign. So this is, then the next one, she's added the crowd. So here and ask for participation with crowd. Do you want to explain, Krista, a little bit what you did here?
Well, first, I guess I have to ask a question because I don't have the quote, and I'm using my iPad, so I can't look up the quote in the book because that's what's on my Kindle or on there. But she says something about don't put the crowd in the car until after the person can do something. Like, I don't know if like communicate. I don't know.
I think it was initiating. Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Once, not until they're initiating comments. I thought that's what it was. Anybody else?
And I can't do that, unless I accept just the head turn only, because I have to give her all of these options in the crowd here. Like, I have to have a button ready to go if she should want to, and I have to teach her that, if I talk about Biscuit, he can say woof woof. I mean, that's where we started a long time ago, was she could push this button because she loves animal sounds. She could push this button, it would say woof woof. And so the crowd had to jump in right away. So that was one of the options. And then she can spell on a letterboard small words. And so I always, I have to have all these things available to her, ready to go. So it's a lot of prep work, I found, for the crowd, for example.
Yeah. Does she have, so she has a letterboard, and what does she have picture symbols that she's using too?
Cortical vision impairment. So the photographs are starting now, but so we're working with we work with rapid prompt method. And so we have our RPM letter boards that she can spell with. And then also it's hard to explain, but like I can take a piece of paper and write 2 options and she can make a choice that way. So those are some of the ways that she can tell me things.
Right.
And then also I can hold up, do you want to take the T for train or the B for bus? And she can pick between those 2 if I explain what I'm holding up. So those are the way that she'll communicate and that we utilize things within shared reading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's put this to the group. Does anybody have ideas about that? So what Chris is talking about bringing in these a little bit more structured questions for students, like Chris's daughters.
So what is the quote exactly, Sari?
I'm sad.
I don't know, I need to find it.
Sorry, I don't have it.
Yeah, I'm not
I
seeing
can
it
look at my phone.
Is it this one? It's what I'm reading on page 57, kind of in the middle. It says, now we take the crowd out of the car and focus on interaction and engagement with car until students are actively initiating and responding during shared reading.
Yeah, that's it, Natalie.
That's it.
It's focusing on building a comprehensive approach to communication. After they begin successfully engaging and interacting during shared reading, using the same communication system they use throughout their day, we put the crowd back into the car and work on refining expanding the way the students interact with us.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Referring to, Krista, that part?
Yeah, I think, yeah, because, if we just read, like my oldest daughter's reading Shakespeare plays to the daughter, Grace, the one that's involved in this. And she plays her toys and she's just in the area. And so she's listening the whole time. Like if she doesn't want to listen to it, she'll put her hands up and say, and then try to get away if she really doesn't want to hear it. But so she's listening to books in that case, but it's not necessarily, I wouldn't call it shared. It's sort of shared reading because it's something they're doing together, but it's not in an interaction. She's just listening. So that's the difference that we're having between like this kind of idea. So I don't know what it means with the wait for her to initiate something. Like, do I add crowd to the Shakespeare if she initiates, oh, wait a minute, what did that mean or something?
Well, I feel like the crowd acronym is pretty structured.
Yeah.
And so the car is more fluid. And so it makes sense to me that possibly the first time around on a book, you just read it with car and you give them that wait time to give you a nod or to give you acknowledgments of things and to have a more natural reading experience. And the flow of the book, particularly as you get older or as you get into nonfiction and things like that, the flow of it is not interrupted. And I think that might be necessary just for the comprehension piece. Then if you come back with the crowd and there's some specific pieces that would, especially in the example that you did here, there are some right and wrong answers. There are limited fields. There is a lot of prep. And I think in the beginning, it's about, this is how we read a book. We read all the way through and we pause for a minute before we turn the page and think about what we think about that. I wonder if it's almost a pre-crowd situation. And I think what they're saying is if you jump straight into crowd, you may miss the storyline.
That makes sense.
And also I think they talk about repeated reading. So you may be working on a book every day for a week or longer, or you may be reading a chapter in a book. You may read the chapter, have some interaction like car, and then go back another day and ask, talk about some more specific recall open-ended questions, things like that.
Yeah, in this example, this book has probably been read 500,000 times. So, by doing the actual crowd, it wasn't done on the first 10 years ago.
Right.
Although we introduced, just caveat, although we introduced her to many other things, this is her, this is her safety blanket. She loves these books. And so we go back to these, and I think I mentioned somewhere in the first slide I was that, we take Biscuit on lots of adventures beyond the book, but Anyways, whatever.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Any other thoughts about this?
Kristen said, I see these models as guides and we don't get fixed in the model that we miss the interaction and the connection and the flow of reading and sharing a story. And then the quote was, the goal is always to maximize interaction page by page. So yeah, I think.
And the quote goes on to say, while enjoying the book together. So that's a quote on page 53.
That's important. It is.
I have a question because I don't know these acronyms because I'm not in the schools anymore. What does D, distance, mean?
Does somebody have an idea before I jump in? And
There just was no further explanation than the word distance in this particular piece.
Amanda, it looks like you're.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea if this is right. I'm also not in the classroom anymore, but I interpreted that to just be like their like emotional distance from like the text or from what they're reading. Like how can you make it more personal to them, bring the distance closer?
That's a great point. I hadn't thought of that. And I was thinking about like calling on things that have happened or may happen in the future kind of idea, but I like that way of explaining it. One thing that I should mention, and I think is at the end of our slides and our notes that we're going to have, is that there are, at the end of this chapter, there's references. So every chapter at the end has some additional resources or readings. And the first time I went through this, I didn't really pick up on those till Kristen said, hey, there's actually videos on some of these things. But the Project Core website is mentioned at the end, and it has modules. And one of those is on shared reading and one is on independent reading. And so if you really do want to get in there and say, you know, I need to know more about what these things are, because it's kind of brief in the chapter, you can do that. You can do the modules. You can do them as a group with other people. So here's a little 2 minutes. We'll do part of it on shared reading example. And again, like Kristen pointed out, it doesn't need to be exactly like this, and it won't be exactly like this when you do it, right? Because you're going to bring your own style, your own flair, and your students have their own interests and responses. But it's just an example for us to look at. Did I share the sound? Can you guys hear it?
I couldn't hear it yet.
Yeah, I thought I might not have done that. Just a minute. Okay, try it again.
Jostled on the bank till they all tumbled in and the poor hog sank. Down dived the dog, who knew what to do.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Uh-oh, there's a big problem. Look, the hog is going down, down, down. He fell in. What a problem. He can't swim.
So far she's read the book, read the page, right? Then she made some comments and hopefully a lot of waiting.
Oh, look at the frog. Look at the dog. What are they going to do? Yeah, you're right. They're going to help. Hey, they could go help. Go help the hog. Go in. Go in and help. What a good friend that would be.
So what if they said, so she had a great open-ended question, what are they going to do? And she's also reading it with interest, right? So it's not just like she's going to model every word and make sure she gets each one. It's kind of, she's like, I'm reading this as if this is a fun activity, right? Because it's about the interaction. So she said, what are they going to do? But what if your student or your child responded, sit? They pointed to sit, or they selected that. What would you guys do? Because in this example, they said help. Oh yeah, they're going to help get them out. What do you think? Because she might not have been thinking sit, right? When she talked about that, what are they going to do? How are you going to validate that response? There's no right answer, by the way.
I was thinking you're validating, you're responding to what they're saying as well about the story. And so I don't know specifically, except that, you know, modeling what they're saying and responding versus getting stuck in the story, because the point is the interaction.
Right. Great.
I think too, you could prompt the child to give you more information about what do you mean by sit? Like, oh, sit, sit on the beach, sit on the dog, sit on the hog, like somehow try to prompt them to, clearly we don't know this child, the therapist or whomever may know the child and know what they mean by sit and be able to expound on that in a way that would make sense. But just seeing this video, if they said sit, I don't know that child, so I would need to get more information from, oh, you would sit. Tell me more about sit. What would you do with that?
Mm-hmm.
And again, to kind of get them more, like Kristen said, more engaged in that interaction rather than you can't sit in the story. That's not an okay answer. So just honor what they give, but then maybe try to pull more out of them if that's, something that they're able to do. Or ask more of them and see what they say, because maybe they make a really amazing connection, when you ask more of them to, further.
Great. Thanks, Natalie.
I think too, I don't know if you verbally acknowledge this, but when I'm thinking of is, I asked, what are they doing? What are they going to do? And you picked a green word. That means you picked a verb. That means you're on the right track in a lot of ways, right? So again, I think if you can, I don't know if you say good job picking a green word, because I don't know that that's what you're doing there. But I think that in my mind, I'm thinking they picked the right part of speech. They picked an action word, and that was the question. In actually lots of ways, it's the right answer no matter what then, right? And then maybe I point out, do we sit in the water or out of the water, right? Or do we sit on something, and I'm just showing them prepositions or ways to further how they would take that and make it give me more information, like Natalie's saying. But we can think how it may not fit, but there's a lot of times you can ask, what are we going to do? And a kid doesn't pick a verb. So there's some acknowledgement on all of those, on picking kind of the right general category.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Let's see. I'm just going to really quick put the link of this, because I don't think I have it anywhere. I'm going to put that in the chat for you guys if that's something you wanted to look at on your own. All right. All right, so shared reading can look different. It could be with books you're sitting down and looking at together. It could be books that you've written together. Maybe they've told a story and you're going back and you're reading those books together. It could be something like Tar Heel Shared Reader, which is a free tool online. And next Tuesday at noon, we'll be looking at Tar Heel Shared Reader, Tar Heel Reader, two different tools, but really similar. And so if you want to learn more about that, but has anybody used Tar Heel Shared Reader and wants to explain it in a nutshell, maybe? So it's very pretty simple to get up and running. I don't remember who says this quote, but you know, if you're not going to be able to set it up with the first 30 seconds, it's going to be basically difficult to use, right? So I always like something that's easy to get going. It's text to speech, or sorry, Tar Heel Reader as text to speech reads the books aloud, maybe for independent reading, right? But Tar Heel Shared Reader is about that interaction, and so it provides ideas for comments. You can see these little comment bubbles here. And then it also provides picture communication symbols that students can use, or they can use their own communication symbols to talk about the books together. So more information about that next week if you're interested. And maybe Kristen can put, if she hasn't already, the link to that webinar in the chat. I'm going to keep it there. Okay. All right, so then on to independent reading, which I think a lot of us said we wanted more information about this. And we will focus our remaining time and breakout time mostly on independent reading if we can. But this is really that access to books that we've talked about. So what we're going to do is do a quick Zoom room. What time is it? Okay, this is going to be a really quick one. Let me just stop sharing for a minute. I'm going to put a link to our notes. Okay. Sorry about that. So in the chat, I have a link to notes that we can open up in your Zoom room. And I will share my screen so you can see. We're just going to look at what reading materials can students access for independent reading? And then how can we embed opportunities for independent and shared reading throughout the day? So in your group, you can decide what you want to focus on. With limited time, I did put, a few links in here. If you guys are really stuck and you just kind of want to explore some ideas, you can do that. But so resources for independent reading or ways to embed it during the day. So if that doesn't make sense, please let me know. And otherwise, I'm going to get us into 3 breakout rooms. And we'll get started. And we will just have about 8 or 9 minutes, 8 minutes, if that sounds okay. Okay, here we go. So when you get into your breakout room, hopefully somebody can pull up these notes and maybe share your screen. Okay. You should have a note that says, join your room. So we looked at resources for independent reading and ways to build that in throughout the day. So room 1, I know you guys spent some time getting to know each other too, which I think is really important for these. And we have different perspectives from what we do, so that's great. But I also see that you've talked about some ways to build opportunities. Does anybody want to share?
Yeah, I'll share, and I've messed up my note taking. I'm, for someone who does AT as a living, I'm not very technical at all. So anyway, actually some sources for independent reading is what
Okay.
should be there. People have used the readers from the Washington State School for the Blind, which are, if you have a vision impairment or a print disability like that, you can access those for free. There are pros and cons. Big ones are the voices. Sometimes they're not choosable, are not optimal. Dolphin Easy Reader app is also a way to access print out loud on an iPad. There were fans of YouTube stories where an author is, or a character or somebody, an actual person is reading the book aloud. Epic Books is also an option to get access to books. And then signed stories. Somebody was looking up some ways for people who are deaf to maybe have the stories signed so that they can read it that way through ASL. We did not necessarily get to opportunities a lot, other than kind of just reading print in the environment a lot, thinking that it doesn't always have to be a story. Sit down and read a story. It can be just print in the environment around the house or when you're driving down the road, things like that. Other thing I didn't add, but I will, is to consider modifying books for those with physical challenges, cardboard books, adding page turners, adding texture to the pages so they can kind of get a feel. This just helps with that engagement and interaction.
Great. All right, thanks, group 1. Room 2, blue. Anybody want to share? Kristen's muted, but I think she's gonna jump in.
I was gonna say, I'll be brave.
Oh, thanks, Tanya. That would be great. Yes, please do.
So we talked about storyline online, where it's actors and people like that are reading books online and kids could access with their Switch. Epic seems to be one that a lot of school districts I've talked to use. Adaptive books, which I actually, when I was reading the book, I thought, I have adaptive books and I'm going to bring it and share it. So here's what my adaptive book looks like. And you just open up the book and you read with the student. So I use it for shared, but then once they get really good at it, they do it independently. And then they can add the pictures or the words. So there's 2 links there for
awesome.
Adaptive books.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I just happened to pop into my head. I'm like, ooh, this is a good place to share this. So picture books, read alouds on YouTube, Read to Go app with Bookshare Books, Libby Library. And then the opportunities throughout the day for independent reading would be, thank you, Daily 5. So some of the districts I've worked in have Daily 5 and they have a reading to self area. Independent reading as an option at break time or when they finish early or during stretch breaks.
Great, thank you. And don't you love when you're reading this book and something comes up that you already do? You're like, oh yeah, I do that. I could bring that out again.
Definitely, and I like to share the adaptive books with other teachers too. It's my favorite thing to share.
Great, okay. So remember your name if somebody needs support. All right, room 3, the orange group. Anybody want to share?
I can start. So we spent quite a bit of time going through the resources that where students can do independent reading. So ReadWorks, Common Lit, and Read Theory are all, I think they're free. If not, I think that they're at least free for teachers. And they Some have leveled readings, but they at least have a speech to text or text to speech option. Epic and Rivet, I'm not as familiar with those, but I know that those are pretty popular with younger elementary students. And then another option was to use the wordless books and have students, which is also we said emergent writing, having them come up with their own captions or their own stories. Just even like giving them the opportunity to flip through a book, or giving them that access to books that they would be able to flip through and like go through the motions, which can also be done on the iPad. And then the opportunities throughout the day, we said that you kind of need to build it in more. So having reading stations, allowing them to do independent sight word reading with their assistive tech apps, and then having a variety of reading materials so that perhaps it might become more of like a choice for them to do independent reading than for it to always feel so forced.
Great, good point. Fantastic. Okay, a lot of really great suggestions here. Thanks so much, everyone. And then here's just a link to those other professional development modules that we talked about earlier. Will be in your notes. Let's see. I was just going to stop recording.